All right, good to see everyone tonight. Go ahead and get started with some announcements. I do not have a lot of announcements, so if there's anything that I miss, just let me know. Again, good to see everyone tonight, those tuning in online. I don't have anyone to pray for our prayer list other than, see if I can find the text. Peyton, there it is. Peyton Nash asked me to announce this on Sunday night, and I forgot, so I apologize to Peyton, but he just asked for prayers for his girlfriend. She had a cyst removed from her sinus glands, and just asking for prayers for her. Her name is Reese, and so Peyton's girlfriend. Other than that, those are the prayer requests that I have. Is there anyone else that we need to add to that prayer list tonight? Yeah, Doris Buckner. If you're not aware, the location where Doris Buckner has been for a while, several years now, I guess she's been there since she's moved out of her home. The facility is closing down. She is having to relocate, find a place to move to, and so that's not something I know she wants to deal with. And so just prayers for her. I'm sure she would love a phone call or a text or a visit. Call and check on her. I'm not sure where she will end up, but I hope it's still close and local, but just praying for her. Upcoming events, activities that we have coming up, same events that we've been announcing for a while. So if you haven't taken note of them or put them on your calendar, or we have some things that we need help food-wise, supplying some food. We have VBS coming up in 2 weeks from tonight. And so hopefully you are planning on attending. Food for VBS each night. We'll have dinner. It's at 5:30, Matt. Schedule 5:30, right? I think it's 5:30 for dinner each night. But we need help with that, and Catherine has organized those meals. And there is a sign-up list on Lightpost and GroupMe. And so if you have either, but if you open up Lightpost and you go to the very bottom to the groups and the members group, her comment with the sign-up is pinned to the top. It's the very first one you're going to see. And so there's a link that you can click and show the food that you can help supply. I think that's a Sign-Up Genius, or what do you call that? What? Sign-Up Genius. And you can see that. So just take note of that and help with the dinner for VBS. VBS going Wednesday through Saturday morning. We'll have breakfast and lunch on Saturday. The 31st, the last Sunday of this month, it's a fifth Sunday, 5 o'clock, we'll have a summer kickoff. Other than those events, we have Warrenton VBS and Camp Inagahee coming up. Pray for those. Be mindful of those coming up. Anything else to remember to announce tonight? All right. I'll have our singing tonight. Keith will have our devotional. And Jimmy Garner will lead us in prayer before we go to our classes. First song, 154, should be on the PowerPoint behind me. 154, Give Me the Bible. Sing the first and fourth verse. Give me the Bible, star of gladness gleaming, to cheer the wanderer, lone and tempest tossed. No storm can hide that radiance peaceful beaming, since Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining. Mission eternal open grave. Show me the light from heaven's shining portals. Show me the glory gilding Jordan's wave. Give me the Bible, holy message shining. Thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Invitation song 5-0. 5-0.
All right, today's text for the devotional is 1 John 2:16. It's 1 John 2:16, and it reads, "For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and desires of the eyes and pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world." Christians never quit God in a single day. Some give up the faith suddenly at times because of the great tragedy in their lives, but these are the exceptions. The way that most Christians lose their faith is through drifting. Drifting is a slow removal of ourselves from the influence of God and His people. It is slow because drifting away from God does not usually set off the alarm bells that a sudden faith crisis might do. Drifting is a way to abandon our faith that will not make us feel too guilty. You can recognize those who are drifting away rather easily. They are the ones who are replacing their spiritual priorities with worldly ones. For example, being with the church slowly becomes secondary to pursuing worldly activities and people. Devotional time with God in prayer and Bible reading is slowly replaced by other urgent things. Serving others is putting aside the times when there is nothing else to do. The saddest reality in all of this is that since our demise in Christ is ever so slow, it is not usually noticed until it is too late. The sin that lies behind drifting is dishonest. We refuse to be honest in acknowledging that the pull of the world and that John refers to as the lust for physical pleasure, the lust for everything we see, and the pride in our possessions. That's what we read, 1 John 2:16. It is what is beginning to drive us rather than the search for God's kingdom and His righteousness, Matthew 6:33. Drifting can be reversed, but it requires a brutally frank assessment of the direction of our spiritual lives, as well as the courage to come to God on His terms, not ours. That is why remaining faithful requires a daily commitment to keep the Lord and His church a priority, lest we drift away. If anyone here tonight has a need, you can come now as we stand and sing.
Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in His grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of washed in the blood of the Lamb. There's a fountain flowing for the soul unclean. Oh, be washed in the blood of the Lamb. Are you washed in the blood? In the soul-cleansing blood of the Lamb. Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? All right, I'll be in Daniel 6 in just a moment. I do have a text I'll go ahead and read. I sat down and saw a text from Sally. She said Tom Belk was in the hospital last night. They did lots of testing and found his problem is, I don't know what that is. Where's my wife? I'll pass this along. They did some testing. He will need to see a orthopedic doctor. I think that's what she says here. Tom Belk. We'll remember Tom Belk. Daniel 6, we're not beginning in verse 1. We're actually beginning about halfway through the chapter in the middle. But backing up for just a moment, thinking about where we've been. I'm not going to go into chapter 7. So when we finish the text, I want to talk about maybe some lessons that we can learn from Daniel 6, some life lessons. There's a lot we can learn from Daniel 6, Daniel in the lion's den. So I'll throw out some ideas and some lessons, and then I have some questions I'll throw on the screen. Not to pop quiz us, but there are some interesting characters, a lot of characters. It's easy maybe to get confused in Daniel with the events, and so just some questions. Make sure that we're learning. I hope we're learning. I'm learning. I've learned a lot teaching the book of Daniel. So we'll think about some questions. But we've considered Daniel's position under Darius. We have King Darius. Nebuchadnezzar is gone. Belshazzar is gone. Daniel 6 is Darius the Mede after Cyrus conquers Babylon. And so here we have Darius. Darius, like Nebuchadnezzar, seemed to really think highly of Daniel. And you'll see Darius struggle with himself because Daniel's been condemned. and he did not want it to be that way, and he tries to change it, but the law of the Medes and the Persians is very strict, and once it is passed, not even the king can change it. And I'm sure if he could, he would have, but he could not, and the people are quick to remind him. But when we turn to Daniel 6, we are told about Daniel's position under Darius, that he was put over governors and princes. Verse 2 or verse 1, it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps or princes. Maybe would be another word that is familiar to us. To be over the whole kingdom, over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one. So Daniel, one governor over 120 satraps. And so we see his position under Darius the king. And then you have some jealousy that I think is brewing here, some jealousy because of Daniel, because Daniel is a Jew, he's in captivity, but because of his faithfulness, God has elevated him in the kingdom. And so here Daniel sits as a foreigner in a high-ranking position in the kingdom. He was the same with Nebuchadnezzar. He was promised the same with Belshazzar, but Belshazzar died. I don't know if he was able to award what he promised. But then you have Darius, and he has elevated Daniel in the kingdom. So some of the jealousy that is going to arise due to Daniel's position from the other men in the kingdom will lead them to trick Darius into signing this decree. So we have the plot to remove Daniel, and they tried to find something against him. Remember, beginning in verse 4, so the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault. They, I'm sure, watched him like a hawk, and he did nothing wrong. That was his character. He wasn't perfect. He was just a righteous man, faithful to God. He lived a righteous, godly life, faithful. He wasn't out on the town doing things that he shouldn't be doing. He wasn't running around doing things. He wasn't stirring up mischief. He was a good citizen, and they couldn't find anything wrong. And so they're basically going to then have to trick Darius to sign something and then to get Daniel. And so we've considered the plot to remove Daniel, and then Daniel's faith is tested beginning in verse 10. When Daniel knew that the decree was signed, I have to wonder if Daniel, being one of the governors, was there when Daniel signed this decree. I don't know. It doesn't say. It just says in verse 10, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed. He knew somehow. I don't know. I have to imagine he was there standing next to the king when it was signed. And he saw it. I don't know. But he knew that it was signed, and he goes to his home. He went into his upper room, windows open to Jerusalem. He knelt down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. And so Daniel did not wait for the decree to be signed to then start praying. It's not one of those situations where Daniel's like, oh no, I don't know what's going to happen now. I better start praying. It was his custom all along, and so he's not going to break it now. He goes home to pray. They see him. They report him. Going down to verse 18. This is where we left off. Verse 19 is where we did not cover this last week, so this is new. But where we left off last week was getting a really good idea of how much King Darius liked Daniel, how distraught Darius is because Daniel is condemned to death, because he signed the decree, and he basically signed Daniel's death warrant. Like, he knows what happened, he realizes it, his eyes are opened, and he's just really distraught over this. And so that's where we left off, just really painting this picture of Darius. But it begins back, really back in verse 13. When Daniel was brought before the king spoke and said to Daniel, nope, that's chapter 5, page flipped on me. Verse 13, they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, does not show due regard to you, O king, or the decree that you signed. So there's a report to the king. And then the king is going to wrestle with himself, struggle, be distraught. He's upset. Then these men approached the king and said to the king, now, O king, this is the law of the Medes and the Persians, that no decree or statute which the king establishes may be changed. You can't change it now. So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the lion's den. But the king spoke to Daniel, saying, your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. That's an interesting statement from Darius, who is a polytheistic Gentile God, not a Jew. Your God, Daniel, may deliver you. He's done other wonderful things. I don't know if Darius knows that. Maybe. I don't think he knows the things he's done for Nebuchadnezzar and what he did to Belshazzar. But maybe your king Daniel will deliver you. Verse 17, then a stone was brought and laid at the mouth of the den, so he's locked in. And the king sealed it with his own signet ring. And it was just a way to know if the den was tampered with or not, if the stone was rolled away, if anything was messed with. The king has sealed it, and nobody's going to mess with it. Then a stone was laid at the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and the signet of his lord. So all of his high-ranking officers, they seal it as well, that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. Nobody's going to come tamper with the stone rolled in front of the lion's den. Verse 18. I know it says 19 up there, but 18 really is the beginning of this section. So let's think about faith rewarded and evil is they will face the condemnation that Daniel faced because of their evilness and tricking the king. So just notice how roles are going to be reversed here. Verse 18, now the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no musicians were brought before him. Also, his sleep went from him. So he's not eating and he's not sleeping. And he will be up all night, it seems, up all night, fasting and no sleep. Sounds like a lock-in. And you morning comes and you're exhausted, but lock-ins, you have plenty of food and you eat all night, which makes you even more tired. Darius here is not eating at all, but we can picture that. We've been up all night. We know what it feels like. He's up all night. He's worried about Daniel. He's not eating. No entertainment, no musicians. Verse 19, then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. He rose early in the morning. He went in haste. He doesn't know at this point what to expect. I don't know what he's thinking. If I was Darius, I know what I would be thinking. Well, hopefully Daniel's God is a real God. Hopefully Daniel's God performed a miracle here. Perhaps Daniel's God did something, because you have to imagine Darius as a polytheistic worshiper of many gods. He's never seen a god perform anything. He probably thinks he has, but he's never seen a god perform a miracle. He's prayed and talked to false gods, and he's asked them to do things, and they're never going to do it, right? I mean, they're false gods. And so imagine someone like Darius or Belshazzar or Nicodemus, and they've asked their gods to do something, and they never will do it because they're not real. And so here's Darius in this position of, I don't know about Daniel's God. Maybe Daniel's God did something. I don't know what to expect. He's running to the lion's den, just trying to really think about the mind of Darius here as he runs to the lion's den. I also wonder how many people Darius has thrown into that lion's den, And every morning after, they have to go and no one's there. Like, they're all dead. They're all gone. They're all consumed by the lions. Like, how many times has Daniel done this? I don't know if it's the first time. I don't know if it's the last time. Well, it's not the last time with Daniel. They'll throw the evil men. Anyway, my point is simply, this might have been routine for Darius. He has been here before with other men. He has seen other men devoured by the lions. He's going to the lion's den early in the morning. He's running. He's in haste. He just doesn't know what to expect. I think it's pretty easy for us to think about him in doing this. Verse 20, and when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying, Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, notice how he always says your God, has your God, maybe your God will save you, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? What if there was like a 5, 10, 15 minute, like, not minute, but like second? What if there was like a 10-second pause? I don't know. I don't know how quickly Daniel responded. But what if he calls out in the lion's den and like there's this 5-second pause and King Darius is just waiting. And then all of a sudden he just hears Daniel's voice and just everything changed for Darius. Darius just liked Daniel, and you can tell by what the text says. He calls out to Daniel, has your God saved you? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also, O king, I have done no wrong before you. Now the king was exceedingly glad for him and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatever was on him, because he believed in his God. Pause there. How amazing is that? Daniel's description of the lion's den. I mean, he spent all night in this lion's den. This is something I've thought about since I've been teaching Daniel. The closer we got to Daniel 6 in my study, privately, just preparing for Daniel 6, just thinking about Daniel. He spent all night in a lion's den. This is just something that I think is amazing, but I don't know how to word it necessarily. Bless you. This is something, he's been all night in the lion's den. Do you think that he was like, what do you think he was doing? Yeah, I agree, Joan. He was probably not sleeping. What'd you say, Hugh? Yeah, I very well think he was praying. Think he was praying, yeah. Very much so. I think Daniel in that position would have prayed.
It's a good example that we face a crisis beyond our control.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't give up and go to the Lord in prayer and say, it's up to you, Lord.
Yeah.
Whatever your will is, thou shalt be.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to ever get to in life.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we all are selfish. We want it our way, but to go and surrender to God is what Daniel did here in the den.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, I think the Lord spared him.
Yeah, absolutely. He surrendered and his faithfulness. Now, let's just think about this. I want to unpack this lion's den as much as possible. We're not going to be here again. And so I want to make this come alive as much as possible in our mind and our understanding. There was a moment when Daniel is thrown into the lion's den, and it probably was very sudden, I imagine. I imagine it was very sudden because those lions would have attacked him, pretty quick, I imagine. Again, I'm just imagining here. I imagine it would have happened pretty quick. So as soon as Daniel is put into the den, Daniel says that a lion appeared, or an angel appeared. He says, my God sent his angel. did Daniel see this angel? It seems like he saw the angel. And so Daniel's in the lion's den. I'm picturing like 5 or 6 lions. And then all of a sudden he sees an angel. Did he have a conversation with the angel? Did the angel have a conversation with Daniel? It seems like other times in Scripture when an angel appeared, the angel has a conversation with the person. So the angel appears and he shuts the lion's mouth. And that's what Daniel describes, or how he describes it. He says, the angel shut the lion's mouth. And so there's this moment after Daniel is in this lion's den, whatever it looked like. And it was probably, I don't know, was it completely dark? Was there light? I don't know. But he's in the lion's den, and then an angel appears, and the angel closes the mouth of the lions. And so there has to be a moment pretty soon after being in this lion's den that Daniel realizes that he's going to be okay. And so he's no longer afraid. And it's not like he spent all night in the den terrified. There's a moment where he realizes God is saving him from this lion's den and closing the mouth of the lions, and that he will come out of it in the morning. And I would also imagine that Daniel knew about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were close friends. And Daniel, under Nebuchadnezzar, was a high-ranking official. And so if Daniel is serving under King Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar throws Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, and there's a 4th person in the furnace, and Nebuchadnezzar sees 4 people. Didn't I put 3 in? But there's 4. Perhaps it was an angel as well. So I'm sure Daniel was familiar with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and how God saved them. So I guess my point is trying to think about the lion's den as much as possible, how we would have felt to be Daniel thrown in the lion's den in that moment that the angel appears and closes the mouth of the lions, and Daniel knows for a fact that he's going to be okay. I think Daniel would have been okay even if he had died. He would have been okay with that. It's like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said that we know that God can deliver us from this, but even if he doesn't deliver us, we're not going to worship your gods. So whether we live or die, we're still going to stay faithful to God. I know that was the mindset of Daniel. Daniel is, if I live or die in the lion's den, I'm still going to stay faithful to God. That's just the way it's going to be. And so even if he had died in the lion's den, so be it. He's going to die in the lion's den. But he doesn't. And it's just a powerful testimony to God and the power of God and the faithfulness of Daniel. And he spends all night with these lions. I wonder if he petted them. Do you think he petted them? Do you think he tried to reach out? Well, what do you do when you see a stray cat, right? You know, here, kitty, kitty. I don't know. Yeah, I can. I can picture Daniel sitting and the lions just kind of laying around him, keeping him warm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about that too. She said that, the claws, they do have claws. Just because their mouth was closed, they still have claws. And I've thought about that too. Nothing is mentioned about their claws, but obviously they didn't do anything, and that was everything about the lion was calm, the mouth, the claws, everything was good for Daniel. So just awesome to think about Daniel here. And yeah.
Now, what was going on in the king's mind? I mean, that's the thing that, when you are challenged with a crisis and you get out of it, what do? I personally believe you thank the Lord for whatever you do. When you get in a crisis and you don't get it quite the way you want, what do? You thank the Lord. I think that's what Daniel and what his deliverance. He prayed because he believed in the Lord.
Sure, sure. I picture, Hughes mentioned a couple of times about Daniel praying in the lion's den. And it reminds me, there's some similarities. I don't know if similarities is the right word, but there's something here. I guess Hugh mentioning Daniel praying in the lion's den. It reminds me of Paul and Silas in Acts 16. I think it's verse 25. They were in prison. They're in Philippi. And at midnight, they were singing and praying. And all the other prisoners could hear them, right? So here's Paul and Silas, and they're in prison. They're not in a lion's den, but it's a prison of sorts. Paul and Silas and the den, it's a prison. And I imagine, I do imagine Daniel at some point in the night prayed, worshiped God or praised God for the deliverance. It just seems like what he would have done, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, he did. So, man, I hope those verses there with Daniel in the lion's den just really, I don't know, I hope they just hit you. I don't know how to describe it. I hope they just really, you're impacted reading those verses in Daniel and his faith and God sparing him in the lion's den. All right, let's think about some other verses here. Verse 24. My clicker not working? There we go. Let's begin in verse 24, but we're going to notice everything's going to turn around. Daniel's going to be spared and elevated in the reign and the kingdom of Darius, and then the evil men that tried so desperately to kill him, they are going to have a taste of what it's like to be in the lion's den. Verse 24, and the king gave the command, and they brought those men who had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the lion's den. Now here's where it's, man, this is heavy. Not just them, their children and their wives. And the lions overpowered them. And I can picture that in my mind. That's pretty graphic. Just that word alone, overpowered them. You can picture that. And broke all their bones in pieces before they ever came to the bottom of the den. I know, right? I see some heads like, oh. It was the practice of the Medes and the Persians, maybe not even just them, but I know it was the practice of the Medes and the Persians to punish the family if someone did something wrong, like these men, to punish the family. And for several reasons. When you kill the family, you extinguish any possibility of revenge. That's the word. I was going to say retaliate, but I knew that wasn't the word. Revenge. So basically, they are extinguishing any opportunity or chance of future revenge from the family. So they're getting rid of the family unit. They're also doing it to teach a lesson to those in the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians that if you do evil, if you break the law, it was kind of a lesson type thing as well. That learn from this. It's hard for me to read that as a father, that these children and these wives were also thrown into these lions' den, and so it served as an example to others, and maybe for some other reasons they would kill the whole family. But it's hard for us to read that and to think about it. Verse 25, then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in every dominion of the kingdom, men must tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. That's a great decree, but I'm still flabbergasted that he's referring to him as the God of Daniel. I don't know if King Darius ever submitted to Jehovah. I don't know if he ever died faithful, believing in Jehovah. He was always just Daniel's God. I also wonder about Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was so close. How did he die? Where is he today? Where is he right now? Where is he? He saw what Jehovah could do. Where is he? I don't know. I have a feeling, but I don't want to say it because I'm not the judge. I have a feeling based on just what we read in the text that he was always Daniel's God and never Nebuchadnezzar's God. He was always Daniel's God. Same thing here with Darius. He's just Daniel's God. So I just hate reading about two kings potentially that saw Jehovah do so many great things and perhaps never obeyed. I don't know, but I don't know. Middle of verse 26, for he is the living God and steadfast forever. His kingdom is the one which shall not be destroyed. It's an interesting reference to Nebuchadnezzar's dream, his kingdom that shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, and has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel proposed, this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. He prospered. He, even in captivity, lived a good life because he was faithful. That brings us to about 7:43. That ends Daniel 6. But let's think about a few life lessons. I have 6, and then some questions just to test us, see if we've been paying attention in the book of Daniel. We're halfway through the book, so this is a good place to stop and reflect on the characters and make sure that we're following the story. Lesson number 1 from Daniel 6 is that consistency matters. When you look at Daniel, he is consistent. He's not faithful and then unfaithful and then faithful. All the way through the book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 6, it's estimated that he's in his 80s. When we're introduced to Daniel in Daniel chapter 1, we don't know, but he's a young man, and he's probably in his teenage years somewhere. And so he's young in Daniel 1. In Daniel 6, he's about 80-something. And the only thing that we read about Daniel is that he is consistently faithful to God. He's consistently faithful. He's faithful when he's promoted. He's faithful when he faces persecution. He is faithful. And so I think one thing that we learn from Daniel 6, really the whole book of Daniel, but Daniel 6, is that consistency matters. To be faithful every day, good, bad, no matter what. Christianity is learning how to be consistent. Sometimes I'll fall short. Sometimes I'll mess up. Get back up. Get back on the straight and narrow. Rededicate yourself and be consistent again. Consistency matters. Integrity stands out. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel, they really stand out in this Babylonian empire, surrounded by all these pagans and worshipers of multiple gods. And in captivity, boy, they are standing out. And they're standing out to the kings. They're standing out to Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar and to Darius, and they're being promoted because their integrity, their moral uprightness is a light. Matthew 5, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Faithfulness may bring opposition. I say may because not always, but it may. Daniel lived a pretty good life until Daniel 6, and then all of a sudden he is faced with this decision. Is he going to pray to God? Is he going to pray to Darius? It brought opposition, but he was faithful even in that. So being faithful may at some point in your life bring opposition. And so you have to purpose in your heart right now what are you going to do when you face opposition? Are you going to remain faithful even when things are difficult? It's not the time and the place to make that decision when things are difficult. It's you decide that before it gets difficult. To purpose in your heart that when opposition comes, I will remain faithful. Number 4, prayer should be a priority in our life. Something we should do every day. It's a priority. I think it was a priority in Jesus' life. We see him praying on multiple occasions. He would wake up early in the morning and he would go and isolate himself and pray in the morning. He would pray before big decisions. He would pray before he dies. He often would pray, and he would teach his disciples to pray, and he placed a lot of emphasis on prayer. And Daniel is thrown in the lion's den here because prayer was a priority to him. The king signed a decree, and Daniel did not care. He goes home with his windows open. Imagine, he could have closed his windows. He could have, but he didn't, because he's not going to stop doing what he's doing, and he prayed. Windows open, they see him, and prayer was a priority to Daniel. Trust God even when the outcome is uncertain. Again, with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they told the king, God will deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we don't know. We're just not going to worship your gods. We're going to stay faithful to Jehovah. So either way this turns out, we're going to be faithful. Daniel, I'm sure, was the same with the lion's den. He could live, he could die, but he's going to remain faithful. And so trust God even when the outcome of something is uncertain to you. And then finally, number 6, I think a life lesson is that God can use faithfulness to influence others. Notice how just Daniel alone, not even talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but Daniel alone, notice how he was such an influence in this kingdom to Nebuchadnezzar, a little bit to Belshazzar, but he didn't live long enough after the writing on the wall. But he admired Daniel's interpretation in that moment to reward him because he was able to read and interpret the writing on the wall. And so he was rewarded briefly from Belshazzar. But Darius, just notice these kings and how they have been influenced by Daniel. And I think God will use our faithfulness to influence people around us. And so a couple of life lessons here to think about. I'm sure there's more that we could come up with. Questions? Who is the last king of Judah? Have to start difficult, I know. It's been a while. But I'm going to remind us. I think maybe something like this is a good way to remind us, and hopefully it'll stick. Remember, Judah is in Babylonian captivity because of Judah's unfaithfulness, but really because their kings, the last 3 kings, were very, very wicked. Okay, you're on the right path. So the last 3 kings of Judah, in order, you have Jehoiakim, his son Jehoiakim, and then the last king of Judah before Babylonian captivity is Zedekiah. And he's the last one. They were all 3 evil, did evil in the sight of God, and they were wicked. So Zedekiah was the last king of Judah that will be conquered by Nebuchadnezzar. How many deportations or carrying aways were there? I heard it, 3. Some will say 4. It just depends on how you interpret one passage, whether it was a 4th carrying away, but mostly it was considered to be 3 carrying away. Daniel and his friends were part of which carrying away? The first. Yeah, they were in the first carrying away in Daniel in chapter 1. Name the 3 kings of Babylon in the book of Daniel. Throughout the whole book, there's only 3 kings. Nebuchadnezzar, Darius, Belshazzar. Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, and Darius the Mede. Who conquered Babylon? It's not Darius. Cyrus. He's mentioned last verse of chapter 6. So then Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Yeah. 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 So, yeah, so she's asking about Darius. I made a comment a week ago, maybe last week, that some think Darius and Cyrus are the same person because in secular history, there's no recorded Darius the Mede. There's no mention of him. And so, from a secular history standpoint, he's not mentioned. And so that leads a lot of people to maybe conclude that Daniel is not an inspired book, and Darius is not a real person. And so then that leads some other people to try to figure out who Darius is. Who is this Darius? And some try to maybe say that Darius is Cyrus because he's not mentioned in secular history, but Cyrus is. So maybe Darius is another name for Cyrus. And so I don't know how to answer your question. Well, I do. Let me say this. It is, I think, obvious when you read Daniel that Cyrus and Darius are not the same person. I think that is obvious. But there are still some that would suggest they are the same, just to try to find a way to prove that Darius, who's not mentioned in secular history, and Cyrus is. Does that answer your question? There's a lot more out there. I don't know. I just know that Darius is questionable to many people. But when we read it, like you said, it's kind of obvious in verse 28 that they're two different people. Yeah. Cyrus, yeah, conquered Babylon. Mm-hmm. So the end of chapter 5, Belshazzar dies. That is right about the time that Cyrus conquers Babylon. So Belshazzar will die, and Cyrus is right there conquering Babylon. And then Cyrus is the one leading the armies to conquer Babylon, but then he places Darius in authority, right? Does it say that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Darius, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. No, yeah, good thoughts. Yeah. Most likely Darius was in the army of Cyrus. He was there with Cyrus. And when Cyrus conquered Babylon, I guess it doesn't say it specifically, but Cyrus would have put Darius into that position, and Cyrus is there the whole time. So this is not two different timelines or two different. This is Cyrus and Darius and the Medes and the Persians, and they conquer Babylon, and it's just Darius that is put into the role of the king, Darius. But Cyrus is the one that conquered Babylon, and he's the one that was prophesied by Isaiah and Jeremiah as the one that would conquer Babylon. So he did the leading, the conquering. Darius is just put into the position of the king once Babylon falls. And so they're there together. And that's a good example. Daniel 6 and verse 28, the last verse, they're mentioned together, the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. And maybe, I don't know why some think Darius is Cyrus, maybe because in verse 28 it mentions the reign of Cyrus and the reign of Darius, and you have two different reigns here, and so maybe it's the same person. But anyway. Yeah, I think it's two different people, but yeah. Yeah. What you got, Gil?
Well, it's the Medo-Persian Empire, right? So
That's true.
the Persian Empire was bigger than the Medes, right? Wasn't it the greater of them?
I don't know about that, yeah.
So Darius is probably from the Medes, and Cyrus was the.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I don't know that much about the history of it. It is two different empires that have united as one. It's the Medes and the Persians. And Cyrus was the Persian, and it mentions that in verse 28, the reign of Cyrus the Persian. It could have been that Darius was from the Medes. And you're right. He is described as Darius the Mede. And there is another Darius, I think, in Scripture, isn't there? There's another Darius the Great. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, a lot of history. That's why when you study Daniel, you really need to study Ezra, Jeremiah, Isaiah. They're all prophesying and working. Like, there's so much overlap and history behind Cyrus and the fall of Babylon, and it's so much, and it's a lot. We got 2 minutes left. Here's a couple more questions. What is Daniel's Babylonian name? I heard it over there. Belteshazzar. Yeah, Belteshazzar. How many days did Daniel and his friends eat vegetables? I heard 30. 10. 10 days was the request. 10 days. How tall was Nebuchadnezzar's statue in chapter 2? Now, I'll give you the biblical answer if you can figure out the... hey, there you go. 60 cubits high, 6 cubits wide, or 90 feet by 9 feet. 90 feet tall by 9 feet wide. Pretty tall. Over how many presidents, I didn't mean presidents there, I don't know why I put presidents, and princes, was Daniel placed in Daniel 6? The satraps. 120, yeah. 120 princes and 3 presidents. I think presidents might be another word for the governors there. Daniel was one of 3 governors. Which world empire came after the fall of Babylon? This is the last answer. We just talked about them. Medes and the Persians, that's right. Medes and the Persians, which is the chest of silver, the arms of silver of the statues. So you have Babylon, head of gold, and the chest of silver, which is the Medes and the Persians. And then, can't remember what comes after that, but we haven't studied it that much for it to stick. All right, that's all I got tonight. Appreciate your attention. Studying Daniel 6. Daniel 7 is where it gets hard. At least I've heard a lot of apocalyptic language and Daniel's visions, 70 weeks, and what all does it represent. I'll do my best to teach in a way that it's understandable. Any questions or thoughts before we conclude? All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for the middle of this week. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being the great and awesome God that you are. Thank you for this opportunity to study again from Daniel, to learn from him. Help us to be faithful like Daniel was faithful, even in difficult situations. And we know, Father, that you will be with us and that you are faithful and that you are a protector of those who are faithful. And just thank you for being that God for us. And thank you for those that are here. Be with us throughout the rest of this week. Keep us safe. And we're mindful of those who need prayer tonight, Father, and we prayed for them. And we just pray that you'll be with them. Again, be with us throughout the rest of this week. Keep us safe. Bring us together on Sunday, the beginning of a new week, if time continues, to worship you on Sunday morning. I pray this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.